Around how long have you been performing professionally or quasi-professionally as a solo artist?
I think it's been at least 3 or 4 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so where are your beginnings? When did you start playing piano? Like, where did you learn? Are you classically trained? Did you just sort of start picking it up?
So actually recently I've been playing guitar mostly. But I did start with piano. That's more my foundation. And I started piano when I was like 10. There was a woman who lived a couple of doors down from me, and I would just walk over to her house and she would give me really informal lessons where I'd essentially learn like whatever song I wanted by ear. So like if I wanted to learn Mary Had a Little Lamb, like I would just figure it out and she'd be like, good job, or like, let's work on this. So I guess it developed my ear, but it was very informal in the beginning.
Sure. So, I mean, would that also have been like your beginnings of also wanting to be a musician, or when did that take hold of like you want to actually pursue this?
Yeah, that was a little later. That was more in high school. I was going to Kappa for literary arts, actually, and I just always felt a kinship to the instrumental majors there, and I just felt like I wanted to be a part of that world. Just the whole concept of having a practice room was like so fascinating to me. Like, wow, this is somewhere you can go and just like make music. That's great. And I'd taken voice lessons and piano lessons beyond school. But at a certain point, I actually ended up leaving Kappa and going to Alderdice for my last year. And during that time, I actually had more time to focus on music. And then that's kind of when I made that shift, was when I switched schools.
Sure. And so, when you continue your education, like a big part of your life seems to have been like studying music therapy. And I remember a year or two ago you were talking about there was a camp that you were at where you were working with music therapy for folks.
Yeah, it was like a residential boarding school, but yeah.
How would you say like?
I was working at a camp. You have a really good memory. I've done like so many things that are similar that it's hard for me to keep track of all of them.
That's cool. But it's like that's been a central focus of your career as well. Like, what points do those two things dovetail, like music therapy and performance?
I really think they go hand in hand because, with anything, like with therapy or with music, like you can learn about theory, you can learn about practicing music therapy, but at the end of the day, experience is what's really going to make you strong. And I think being a performer just gets you used to being in front of people and being more engaging. And I think that's something that music therapy and performance share is like you want to have this engaging presence that really draws people in.
So music therapy, is it about using music as therapy or actually using like the act of playing music as therapy?
It could be either. It takes a lot of different forms. Essentially, music therapy is the use of music to achieve a therapeutic goal. So instead of like music education, which is to achieve a musical goal, like learning how to play piano or improving your technique, music therapy is like you might work on improving speech production if you're a child with autism, or maybe for someone who's an older adult, they would be working on reminiscence and becoming just more aware of reality if somebody has dementia. So
sure,
it could be a range of different things.
And so would you say the music, like your interest in these educational academic aspects, has it influenced like your songwriting?
Yeah, I did study music therapy and jazz voice at Duquesne, and I always felt like yes, I was a music therapy major, but I was also a performance major at heart because, I don't know, like I would just choose to do a recital or choose to, that's actually how I got started playing out. Because my senior recital ended up being a gig at, what was the Ava Lounge at the time in North Oakland.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that I just transitioned literally like right from school into performing. So
that's pretty cool. And you've been fairly prominent. Like you've been getting a lot of attention some radio
Thanks.
airplay and stuff, right?
Yeah, on
Yeah.
WYP.
Yeah. So I mean, and one thing I've also noticed with that heightened profile is you tend to be fairly vocal about being a woman in the music industry and like how that affects all the touchstones, right? Like how you get gigs, how you're booked, how you're paid.
Yeah.
Have you found that becoming maybe a little easier as your profile continues to grow, that you're seen more as just a musician, or is that just something you can't really get away from?
It depends. I mean, like, every once in a while I play a show outside of Pittsburgh, and, you know, like, then nobody knows, and even in Pittsburgh, not everybody knows who I am. It's not like I'm famous, but, I mean, yeah, I think with other musicians, like, having a little bit of a higher profile does help, because they're like, oh, Avi Diamond, like, I've heard of you, and I've seen your stuff online, so, like, they know that, like, I'm serious, and I'm not just a vocalist, like, I'm also an instrumentalist and an artist, because I think there's a difference between those things. But I think the hardest thing for me is sometimes when I play a show with a big band, particularly in jazz, people will often approach my male musician counterparts before they approach me about booking or just like feedback for the overall band. And sometimes they'll ask them questions that like should really be directed to me, because, you know, it's like, it's the Avi Diamond band, and like I'm the one booking and I'm the one handling all of the business side of that. So like it is a little bit frustrating when they assume that I'm not in charge of it because I'm singing or something like that.
Sure.
Or for whatever reason.
Yeah, they just assume this is the front woman, so the real meat of the band is in the background.
And they're amazing, and like, you know, couldn't have the show without them, but like, I'm also an important part of it.
What do you play as now? Are you a three-piece? Are you larger than that now?
I'm in a couple of different projects. Actually, last night I played the jazz festival at Future Tenant Gallery. So that was a quartet with like keys, bass, percussion, and then I sang. For jazz shows, like, I don't play any instruments because I just want to focus on singing, because that's the heavy lifting of music for me.
Of course, of course.
With my original music project, typically it's me playing guitar and singing, and then I have a bass player and a drummer, sometimes a violin player, but my violin player is moving to England, so...
As like a song interpreter, when you're doing the jazz stuff, do you focus mostly on standards? Do you try and find more obscure songs, or do you include some of your originals in that sort of arrangement?
Yeah, I think about set lists a lot, especially when it comes to jazz, because I think when people think of jazz, they're coming in with very different expectations. There's so many eras of jazz and different styles. I really like to have a mix of standards that people will know, just because, like, I think sometimes people come into jazz shows and they like get hit with this very abstract, hard to relate kind of music. So I like to have something that they can relate to, and maybe that's the music therapy side of me. But I also like to, especially later in the set, throw in some like pop covers that are reharmonized and made like more like the Bad Plus, or like what's his name? There's so many other great people. But actually we did like a sort of Corey Henry arrangement of Crazy by Gnarls Barkley last night, which was like, I think people weren't expecting that.
Cool. So just for my personal edification, Corey Henry being...
He's a keys player. He's actually playing at the Jazz Festival as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you sort of took his arrangement. He did an arrangement of...
Crazy. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. So you are playing at Deutschtown. Mm-hmm. And what can people expect from that performance? Is it going to be more jazz oriented or more originals?
Definitely more originals and folk. That's the thing, like, people can go to one of my shows and then go to another one, and it's like kind of a different person almost. I just relate to a lot of different styles. So for Deutschtown, it's going to be a lot of folk. I always have a little bit of neo-soul influence because that's just what I listen to as well. Yeah, it's going to be a little softer, but also those hints of anger, because that always seems to come out of my music.
Sure. So what stage, when and where are you performing at Deutschtown?
I'm performing July 14th at 6 p.m. at the Penn Brewery restaurant stage.
Wow. Very cool, very cool.
Yeah, I love Penn Brewery, I'm so excited.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that stage. That's awesome. And what other upcoming projects, shows, or anything you'd like to plug?
Let me think. Well, I'm playing Jazz Fest tomorrow, but obviously it'll be too late for that by the time it's posted. I'm playing at Wallace's Whiskey on June 26th.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be like a singer-songwriter night, so that should be pretty fun. I'm playing the Solar series at the Children's Museum July 18th. It's hard keeping this like mental calendar.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about Town. So.
Very cool. Yeah, I think everyone is. I think it's one of the big events. It's become one of the big events. So I think that's very cool. As far as you have an EP, right?
I have an EP and an LP.
Okay. And where can people find those to buy them or listen or stream or whatever?
I have the EP on Bandcamp. The LP is on iTunes, but I'm about to sort of just put them all on Spotify because I want to make it more accessible. So it will be available on Spotify very soon.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
And is there anything else where people can reach you, website or anything like that?
Yeah, actually I have a website now, avidiamond.com. So all my shows are always listed on there, videos. Facebook, Avi Diamond Jazz. I should probably change the name of that because I do more than jazz.
Sure.
And then I do have Instagram. I'm taking a break right now, but I'll be back soon. It's just at Avi Diamond. Hi, I'm Avi Diamond, and Mr. Bones knows me.